So today we are going to see about cerebellum. Cerebellum is the largest part of a hindbrain. It consists of two lateral parts called cerebellar hemisphere and both lateral parts connected in the midline by narrow central region called the vermis. We will see this topic under the following objectives. So at the end of lecture you must know what are the functional anatomy of cerebellum, neural circuits that is present in the cerebellum, connections of cerebellum, afferents, projections and the efferents, then functions of cerebellum and applied aspect. So cerebellum is a little brain which is a part of hindbrain and it is responsible for coordinating muscular activity, sequence the motor activities, monitor and makes corrective adjustment in the activities initiated by other part of brain, and cerebellum also compares the actual motor movements with the intended movements and make corrective changes. So these are the very important functions of cerebellum, and these functions are important to maintain the normal posture, tone in the body, so that person can do the voluntary movements easily. So we will see cerebellum. So cerebellum is the largest part of hindbrain. You can see in the diagram. So this is the cerebellum. So cerebellum has two surfaces. Superior surface is related to tentorium cerebelli and the inferior surface is related to the hollow of occipital bone. It consists of folias. The surfaces of cerebellum are thrown into numerous transverse folds are called as cerebellum. So in the diagram you can see the different folds are there and these are called as the folia. Also cerebellum is having fissures. The surface of the cerebellum present three main fissures. And the cerebellum is connected to the brainstem by three different peduncles. So we have an inferior cerebellar peduncle. It connects the cerebellum to the medulla. Then medial cerebellar peduncle. It connects the cerebellum to the pons, and the superior cerebellar peduncle. It connects cerebellum to the midbrain. And all the afferents and the efferents which are going or coming out from the cerebellum are going through these peduncles, that is inferior cerebellar peduncle, middle cerebellar peduncle and superior cerebellar peduncle. So in the diagram you can see this is the largest part of the hindbrain. You can see the area and the surface of the cerebellum thrown into the folds, that is called as folia, and you can see the fissures also. So this is the part of cerebellum. Here there is a pons. This is the fourth ventricle. You can see here the cerebellar peduncle. So this small is one the superior cerebellar peduncle. You can see here. Then the superior cerebellar peduncle. Here is the medial cerebellar peduncle and this one is inferior cerebellar peduncle. So through these cerebellar peduncles the afferents and the efferents going and coming from the cerebellum. This is the medulla oblongata. You can see this is the fourth ventricle in which choroid plexus is present, which secretes the cerebrospinal fluid. Now in this diagram you can see the fissures of cerebellum. So the center part of the cerebellum, the center part is called as a vermis. The central part is called as vermis, and the lateral part, all these lateral part are called as a hemisphere. So this hemisphere is divided into three different parts with the help of fissures. So it has a primary fissure, horizontal fissure and posterolateral fissure. So this is the primary fissure. So primary fissure lies on anterosuperior aspect of the cerebellum. It is V shape. With opens being forward, and it forms a posterior limit of anterior lobe. So this is primary fissure and this is anterior lobe. So it forms the limit of anterior lobe. Now the horizontal fissure. So horizontal fissure separates superior surface of the cerebellum from its inferior surface and thus follows the convex posterior and the anterolateral border of the cerebellar hemisphere. So this is the horizontal fissure which separates superior surface of the cerebellum from its inferior surface. The last fissure is a posterolateral fissure. So this is posterior or a posterolateral fissure. It is situated anteriorly on the inferior surface of the cerebellar hemisphere and separate the posterior lobe from the flocculonodular lobe. So this is flocculonodular lobe and this is the posterior lobe. So we have a primary fissure, horizontal fissure and posterior fissure. Now what are the anatomical parts of the cerebellum? The cerebellum consists of two cerebellar hemispheres and the median vermis. So this part is the vermis, the medial part is vermis, and these are the two cerebellar hemisphere. Parts of vermis you can see here. So in the center, vermis is having a different parts, and this vermis is so named because it resembles a worm which is bent on itself to form a complete circle. So superior and the inferior surface of the vermis are termed superior vermis and the inferior vermis. So from above you can start to give a name for the different parts of vermis. So here it consists of lingula, then this is the central part, the culmen, declive, folium, tuber, pyramis. This is uvula and this is nodule. So these are the parts of vermis. The parts of cerebellum. So parts of cerebellum you can divide it into three lobes. The anterior lobe, so here you can see this is the anterior lobe. This is the anterior lobe. So this part is the anterior lobe. Then there is a posterior lobe. So this part is the posterior lobe, and then there is a flocculonodular lobe. So these are the three lobes of cerebellum. Anterior lobe is the part of cerebellum which lies in the front of primary fissure. So here is a fissure, you can see. So the part of the cerebellum which is lies in front of the primary fissure is called as anterior lobe. The part of the vermis and the hemisphere forming an anterior lobe. The posterior lobe is that part of cerebellum which lies between primary fissure and posterolateral fissure. So this is the posterolateral fissure, you can see. So the part between the anterior fissure and the posterior fissure. So whole this is posterior lobe. Then flocculonodular lobe. So this portion or a part of cerebellum which lies anterior to the posterolateral fissure on the inferior surface is called as flocculonodular lobe. So this is the flocculonodular lobe. It consists of nodule. So this center part of the vermis is a nodules, and the expanded part you can see here, which are the irregular in shape, and it is attached to the nodule on each side. So this part is called as floccules. So this lobe is called as flocculonodular lobe. So flocculonodular lobe consists of floccules and nodules. The corpus cerebellum is divided by primary fissure into anterior and posterior lobe. So the part of anterior lobe, it consists of lingula, lobulus centralis, culmen, and the posterior lobe, the lateral part, that is anisoforms and the paramedian lobules, median and the paramedian parts, and the lobulus. Also the central part, it consists of lobulus simplex, declive, tuber, pyramis, uvula, and paraflocculus. So in this diagram again you can see the posterior part is having the declive, folium, tubers, pyramis, uvula. So in this diagram you can see the central part, that is a vermis. So this is the vermis, this is vermis, and these are the hemisphere. Here is the anterior lobe, you can see, posterior lobe, and the flocculonodular lobe. Also in this diagram you can divide the cerebellum in a central part, that is vermis. On both the side of central part there is immediate zone of hemisphere, and the side part is called as lateral zone of hemisphere. So all these three parts having the different functions to maintain muscle tone, stretch reflex, and posture of the body. And also the sensory representation of the body in the cerebellum is different in these different parts. So functionally arranged along this longitudinal axis, we have a vermis located at the center, controls the axial movement of the neck, shoulder, and the hip. So this is the vermis, you can see, and it controls the axial movements of the body, neck movements, and the hip and the shoulder movements. Intermediate zone, that is just immediate to the vermis, controls motion of a distal portion of upper and the lower limbs, especially hands and feet. And the lateral zone control sequencing movement of the muscle. So it is important for timing, coordination, and the movement. So you must remember the function of all these three parts. So vermis controls the movement of neck, hip and the central portion of the body and as well as shoulder, whereas immediate zone controls the motion of distal portions of upper and lower limbs. So the precise movements by the hands and the feet are smoothly carried out by a intermediate zone, and a lateral zone is specially spared for a control of a sequencing movements of the muscle, and it is important for timing and coordination of movement. After anatomical division, we will see the phylogenetical division of cerebellum. So it is divided as a archiocerebellum, paleocerebellum and neocerebellum. Archiocerebellum represented by flocculonodular lobe. It is the oldest part to develop. It consists of flocculonodular lobe and the lingula. The second is paleocerebellum. Phylogenetically, it is the next part to appear. So, first one is archiocerebellum, that is flocculonodular lobe, and second is paleocerebellum. So, entire anterior lobe except lingula and the following parts of the posterior lobe, that is pirimis, uvula and paraflocculi. So, these are the parts of paleocerebellum. So, whole of the anterior lobe except lingula and a part of posterior lobes, that is pirimis, uvula and paraflocculus. So, it forms paleocerebellum. The third one is neocerebellum. It is the latest part to develop. It consists of whole of the posterior lobe except pirimis and the uvula. So, it forms neocerebellum. Also, functional division of cerebellum is there. So, functionally the cerebellum is divided into again three parts, that is vestibulocerebellum, spinocerebellum and corticocerebellum or a neocerebellum. So, vestibulocerebellum, it includes the flocculonodular lobe. So, it includes the flocculonodular lobe which is principal component and has three vestibular connections mainly to the nucleus fastigius is its effector nucleus, and it is concerned with the control of body posture and equilibrium and eye movements. So, that is the function of vestibulocerebellum. Then come to spinocerebellum. It includes the part forming paleocerebellum, the entire anterior lobe except lingua and some part of posterior lobe, that is pirimis, uvula and paraflocculus. Nucleus interpositus means the nucleus globosus and the nucleus emboliformis are its effector nuclei. So, nuclear globosus, emboliformis, or previously we have seen the nucleus fastigius, these are the deep cerebellar nuclei. So, mainly the efferents are going from this deep cerebellar nuclei. So, for spinocerebellum, the effector nuclei are nucleus globosus and the nucleus emboliformis. From there, the fibers are going to the muscles. So, it receives, this part is receives the proprioceptive inputs from the spinal cord and is concerned with control of axial, that is trunk, and the limb muscles postural reflexes. So, this from the spinocerebellum through the deep cerebral nuclei, that is nucleus globosus and emboliformis, the efferents will go as a vestibulospinal tract and the reticulospinal tract, and they control the axial and the limb muscles and the postural reflexes. The third division is corticocerebellum or a neocerebellum. So, corticocerebellum, also called as central cerebellum, includes whole of the posterior lobe. So, it includes whole of the posterior lobe except pirimis and the uvula. So, effector nucleus for this neocerebellum is dentate nucleus. It occupies the most lateral region of the cerebellar cortex and it receives the information from cerebral cortex and pons, and it is concerned with the smooth performance of highly skilled voluntary movements. So, neocerebellum is important for the highly skilled voluntary movements. So, the function of vestibulocerebellum controls the body posture, equilibrium and eye movements. Spinocerebellum controls the axial and the limb movements and the postural reflexes, whereas neocerebellum control the voluntary movements, the skillful voluntary movements. Now we will see structure of cerebellar cortex. So, cerebellum is outer grey matter called as cerebellar cortex that surrounds the inner white matter. So, cerebellar cortex has a uniform structure in all parts of cerebellum, and the structure of the cerebellum is opposite to that of the spinal cord. So, there is outer grey matter and inside is there is a white matter, whereas in the spinal cord outside there is a white matter and inside is grey matter. So, the cerebellum is having the structure opposite to that of the spinal cord. So, cerebellar cortex is the outer grey matter layer and the white matter is formed by afferent and the efferent nerves fibers of the cerebellum and they form the medullary core. Also, cerebellum is having a deep cerebellar nuclei, that is the masses of grey matter embedded in the medullary core, that is nucleus fastigious, nucleus dentate nucleus, the nucleus emboliformis and nucleus globosus. When you will see the microscopic examination of cerebellar cortex, it consists of three layers: an outer molecular layer, which one is a very superficial layer, a middle Purkinje layer and the inner granule layer. So, in the diagram you can see so this outer is the molecular layer. So, this outer is the molecular layer, it is a more superficial. Then there is a medial Purkinje cell layers, you can see. So, this is the medial Purkinje cell layer, consists of a Purkinje cells in a single row, and inside that there is a inner granular layer. So, this is the inner granular layer. So, and inside that there is a white matter. So, this is the cortex, that is the grey matter, and this is the white matter which consists of afferents and the efferents of cerebellar cortex. So, molecular layer, so it's composed of two type of neurons. You can see in the molecular layer it consists of the dendrite synapses with the parallel fibers of granule cells and their axons synapses with the dendrites Purkinjes. So, you can see in the molecular layer we have this stellate cell and a basket cell. So, these two cells are present in the outer molecular layer. So, stellate cell you can see these are the star shaped stellate cells, star shaped, more superficially they are located, and their dendrites you can see the dendrite synapses with parallel fibers of granule cells. So, granule cells they are present in the granular layer and the dendrites of these stellate cells are forms the synapse with the dendrites of Purkinje cells. So, this in the Purkinje cell layers there are the single layer Purkinje cells and this forms the dendrites with the dendrites of stellate cells. Come to the basket cells. So, it is located deep in the molecular layer. See, stellate cells are superficial, basket cells are slightly deeper one. They receive the input from parallel fibers. Their axons branch and forms the basket around the cell bodies of Purkinje cells. So this is the layer of Purkinje cells and these are the basket cell. So they forms the basket around the fibers. Each basket cell may synapse with about 70 Purkinje cells. So the dendrites of this basket cell will synapses with the cell bodies of these Purkinje cells. The nerve fibers that are present in the molecular layers are parallel fibers. So parallel fibers are arising from the granular cells. So granular cells are moving up and they showing the parallel fibers like this. So these parallel fibers are present in outer molecular layer. Also it consists of dendrites of Purkinje cells. So these are the dendritic cells. The dendrites of Purkinje cells are present in the outer molecular layer. Also the climbing fibers from inferior olivary nucleus. So in the diagram you can see these are the climbing fibers. So you can see here the climbing fibers are this. So these are the climbing fibers and from the climbing fibers they are moving up to the outer molecular layer. So the nerve fibers that are present in the molecular layer are parallel fibers of the granule cells. They are going like this. They form the parallel fibers. Dendrites of Purkinje cells. So these are the Purkinje cells. So dendrites of the Purkinje cells are present in the outer molecular layer and the climbing fibers from the inferior olivary nucleus. So these structures are present in outer molecular layer. Now the Purkinje cell layers. So this middle is the Purkinje cell layer which is green in color. It is composed of single layer of large flask shaped Purkinje cells. So Purkinje cell is biggest neurons in the body. So dendrites of Purkinje cells extend into molecular layers. So the dendrites of Purkinje cells extend into molecular layers and provide a huge surface area for exodendritic synapses. Axons of these cells make a synaptic connection with the deep cerebellar nuclei in medullary core. They act as a sole output neurons from cerebellar cortex and exerts inhibitory influence to the deep cerebellar and the lateral vestibular nuclei. So that you will see in the next diagram how the Purkinje cells are giving inhibitory input to the deep cerebellar nuclei. After Purkinje layers, we will see the granular layer. So granular layer consists of granuli and the Golgi cells. So these are the granular cells. You can see granular cells and we have a Golgi cells. So these are the Golgi cells here. So granular cells, you can see they are moving from granular layer to the outer molecular layer and they gives a parallel fiber. So these are the parallel fibers of granular cells. Granular cells are very small, numerous. Axons of the granular cells ascends into the molecular layer and form the parallel fibers which make excitatory synapses with dendrites of Purkinje cells, stellate cells, basket cells and Golgi cells. So these granular cells giving a fibers like this and also they forms the synapses with these basket cells, Golgi cells and the stellate cells also. And also these parallel fibers will influence on the Purkinje cells also. Golgi cells are largest cells. So you can see here Golgi cells, they are the largest large cells and less numerous than the granule cells number are less. The dendrites project into molecular layer and receives inputs from the parallel fibers. Their cell bodies receive input via collateral from the incoming climbing fibers and Purkinje cells. Their axons branch extensively and make inhibitory synaptic connection with dendrites of granule cells. Now the afferents which are coming to the cerebellum, they are in the two forms, that is climbing fibers and Mosey fibers. So climbing fibers and the Mosey fibers are the input in the form of afferent fibers. Climbing fibers arises from neurons of inferior olivary nucleus which is situated in medulla and reach the cerebellum via olivocerebellar tract. Climbing fibers establish one-to-one connection with the Purkinje cell dendrites and excite them to discharge. Collaterals of climbing fibers synapse with the all other type of neurons in the cerebellar cortex and also the deep cerebellar nuclei. So whenever there is activity is increased with a new learned movements, so the climbing fibers impulses are going to increase and they establish one-to-one connection with Purkinje cells. Collaterals of these fibers excites the Golgi cells. Mosey fibers. So like climbing fiber, the fibers, Mosey fibers have a many source of origin. These are axons of spinocerebellum, vestibulocerebellar, reticulocerebellar, cuneocerebellar and the corticopontocerebellar tracts. So from all these tracts, that is spinocerebellar, vestibulocerebellum, cerebellar, reticulocerebellar, cuneocerebellar and corticopontocerebellar tracts. So all these fibers coming together and they forms Mosey fibers. Each Mosey fiber makes synaptic connection with many granule cells. Mosey fibers are excitatory to all the fibers and exerts weak excitatory effect on many Purkinje cell dendrites via the parallel fibers of granule cells. So each Mosey fiber activate about 450 Purkinje cells through the granule cell and their parallel fibers. Thus the climbing fibers excites a single Purkinje cells, whereas Mosey fibers through the granule cells and parallel fibers fires several thousand of Purkinje cells. So both the climbing fibers and the Mosey fibers of a sensory input exerts a excitatory influence. So both are excitatory to the different cells of cerebellar cortex. Out of 5 types of neurons in the cerebellar cortex, only the granule cells are excitatory. It releases the excitatory neurotransmitter, that is glutamate. The other 4 type of neurons, that is Purkinje cells, Golgi cells, basket cells and the stellate cells, they are the inhibitory and release the inhibitory neurotransmitter, that is gamma amino butyric acid. So in this diagram you can see so the climbing fibers from the inferior olivary nucleus. So input is from inferior olivary nucleus and the Mosey fibers, these are the axons of spinocerebellum, reticular cerebellum, then the vestibulocerebellum, cuneocerebellum. So the proprioceptive information from the whole body and also the vestibular information, that is the head and the eyes movements, and also the fibers from corticopontocerebellar tract. So all this information is come via Mosey fibers. So from these Mosey fibers, both these fibers are the excitatory, that is the glutamatergic fibers. So pink color it is showing the excitatory fibers, that is glutaminergic. Now Mosey fibers is excitatory to granule cells. So pink color is showing this is the granule cell. So Mosey fibers excitatory to granule cells. Now you can see the larger scale, that is the Golgi cells. So the Golgi cells is also showing the connection to these Mosi fibers and the granule cells like this. So the Golgi cells is large cells. So their dendrites project into molecular layer and receives the inputs from parallel fibers. So it forms the collaterals from the Mosi fibers. So here the Mosi fibers is excited to the granular cells, but the dendrite of the Golgi cells is inhibitory to the this granule cells. So this is called as a feed forward inhibition. The Mosi fibers stimulating the granule cells. However, this excitation is short lasting. This is because the Mosi fibers also excites the Golgi cells, which is turn inhibits the granule cells. So you can see the Mosi fibers stimulates the granule cells via parallel cells. The parallel fibers, these are the parallel fibers of granule cells, you can see here, and again they are stimulate the Golgi cells, stimulating the Golgi cells, but Golgi cells will get again inhibit this granule cell. So this granule cell and the Golgi cell are excited by the same excitatory input, that is the Mosi fibers. This arrangement is said to proceed feed forward inhibition of granule cells. So in this way granule cells is get inhibited via feed forward inhibition by Golgi cells. In the diagram you can see this is the Purkinje cells. This is Purkinje cells. So this Purkinje cell is having the excitatory input from climbing fibers. So pink color having the excitatory input to the Purkinje cells. Also from the granule cells, which gives the parallel fibers to the outer molecular layer, and these parallel fibers also excitatory to Purkinje cells. But this Purkinje cells is inhibited by the stellate cells. You can see the stellate cell is stimulated or excited by the parallel fibers of granular cell, but stellate cell inhibits the Purkinje fibers. Also basket cell excited by the parallel fiber of granular cell, but it get inhibited to the Purkinje cells. So Purkinje cells is inhibited by stellate cell and the basket cell, which are excited by granule cells. So this is called as a feed forward inhibition of Purkinje cells. So Purkinje cell and the basket cell are excited by the same excitatory output, that is from basket cell and Purkinje cells, they are excited by same excitatory output, that is the granule cells. So they are exciting the Purkinje cell, exciting the stellate cell and the basket cells, but these are going to inhibit Purkinje cells. So this arrangement is called as feed forward inhibition, and this mechanism helps to limit the duration of excitation produced by given afferent impulses. Now come to the again granule cells. So granule cell is excited by Mosi fibers. So in the diagram you can see granule cells is stimulated by the Mosey fibers. The axon of granule cell excites the Golgi cell dendrites. So, this is the Golgi cell, these are the dendrites. So, Mosey fibers excite this dendrites of Golgi cells also, and whose axons inhibits the granule cells. So, the axons, this is the axon of Golgi cell and it inhibits the granule cells. So, excitation of the granule cell is rapidly decreased by negative feedback loop via Golgi cells. So, this arrangement is called the feedback inhibition of granule cells. So, from the above description, that is feed forward inhibition of Purkinje cell or feed forward inhibition of granule cell, feed forward inhibition of Purkinje cell here, feed forward inhibition of granule cells, and the feedback inhibition of again the granule cells. So, all this inhibition is taking place in the neural circuits inside the cerebellum, and they are meant for ensuring that discharge of the granule cells and the Purkinje cells are extremely precise and short lasting, and that is helpful for neural sharpening. So, this helps in accurate timing of action potential. Also, this in the cerebellum we have a reverberating circuits. So, granular cells and the Purkinje cells form the reverberating circuits, or it is called as a echoing circuit. So, the person is making the alternate supination and the pronation of his hand rhythmically. So, this is made possible by reverberating circuit of cerebellum. So, here the agonist and the antagonist muscle are there, and they are stimulated and inhibited simultaneously. So, when the rhythmic supination and the pronation are practiced repeatedly, the synaptic connections between Purkinje cells and the parallel fibers of granular cells, they are getting alternated, and these movements are possible and you can do this task precisely. So, this is the neuronal circuit, and from here whatever the output you are going from Purkinje cells. So, from Purkinje cells the output is going to deep cerebellar nuclei and also to vestibular nuclei. So, in the neural circuit we have seen the negative feedback loop, feed forward inhibition of Purkinje cell and the granular cells. Other cells we have seen, that is Golgi cells, Purkinje cells. There is a basic electrical rhythm is present in the cerebellar cortex, and that is helpful for the basis of the learning. The transmitters that is secreted by the stellate basket, Golgi and the Purkinje cells are GABA, that is inhibitory, and the granule cells is the only cell which is excitatory and that secretes glutamic acid. So, this is about the grey matter of cerebellum. Now, in the white matter of the cerebellum, it consists of afferents and the efferent fibers. So, you can divide these afferents and the efferent fibers in the form of projection fibers, association fibers and commissual fibers. So, projection fibers, that is fibers which are connect the cerebellum with other parts of central nervous system. So, projection fibers will connect the cerebellum to the other part of central nervous system, and these projection fibers, they are arranged in three bundles, that is superior cerebellar peduncle which connects the cerebellum to the midbrain, then the middle cerebellar peduncle which connects cerebellum to pons, inferior cerebellar peduncle which connects cerebellum to medulla. So in the diagram you can see this is the cerebellar cortex which thrown into different folds. So this is the superior cerebellar peduncle here. The yellow one is the medial cerebellar peduncle, and inside that there is a small structure you can see here. This is the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So through this the fibers, the afferents and the efferents are going. So from the inferior cerebellar peduncle, mostly the afferents are coming to the cerebellum. From the superior cerebellar peduncle, the efferents, mainly the efferents are going from cerebellum to the other part of the cerebral cortex. And from middle cerebellar peduncle, mainly the connections from the pons, they are coming to the middle cerebellar peduncle. So these are the projection fibers. Now what are the association fibers? Association fibers connects the different regions of the same cerebellar hemisphere. So these are called as association fibers. And the commissural fiber connects the two cerebellar hemisphere. So fibers which are connecting two cerebellar hemisphere, they are called as commissural fibers. Now we'll see first the afferent connections. So mainly all the afferent connections, they are coming to the cerebellum from inferior cerebellar peduncle. So afferent connections consist of dorsal spinocerebellar tract, ventral spinocerebellar tract, olivocerebellar tract, vestibulocerebellar tract, cuniocerebellar tract, tectocerebellar tract, cortico-pontocerebellar tract, rubrocerebellar tract and reticulocerebellar tract. So the afferent fibers passing through the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So out of all these afferent connections, the connections which are passing through inferior cerebellar peduncle are dorsal spinocerebellar tract, reticulocerebellar tract, olivocerebellar tract and vestibulocerebellar tract. So these tracts are going via inferior cerebellar peduncle. Also some efferents are leaving from the inferior cerebellar peduncles are cerebellovestibular pathway, cerebelloreticular pathway and cerebello-olivary pathway. Out of these tracts which are going through the middle cerebellar tracts, they are mainly the cerebropontine cerebellar tracts, means connections are coming from cerebral cortex to the pontine nuclei and pontine from pons to the cerebellum. The fibers which are going, they are going via middle cerebellar peduncle. The afferents which are passing through the superior cerebellar peduncles are ventral spinocerebellar tract and tectospinal tract. So these are the two tracts which are going to cerebellum through superior cerebellar peduncle, and the efferents are leaving from the superior cerebellar peduncle are dentorubral, dentothalamic and the cerebellar reticular fibers. So the dorsal spinocerebellar tract, it is an uncrossed tract which arises from ipsilateral Clark's column of the cell and carries proprioceptive information from the limb of the same side. So it enters through the ipsilateral inferior cerebellar peduncle and is distributed to the spinocerebellum. Now the ventral spinocerebellar tract. The fibers of this tract arise from marginal cells in the dorsal grey horn of the spinal cord. After taking origin, the fibers cross in the midline. So ventral spinocerebellar fibers will cross in the midline and ascend in opposite side. It carries the proprioceptive information from the limb of the opposite side. It enters the cerebellum through superior cerebellar peduncle and is distributed to the lower limb area of the cortex of the spinocerebellum. Now the cuniocerebellum. The cuniocerebellum, it arises from accessory cuneate nucleus and carries proprioceptive impulses from the upper limb, upper trunk and the neck. It enters through the ipsilateral inferior cerebellar peduncle and is distributed to the spinocerebellum. Now the olivocerebellar tract. Olivocerebellar tract arises from olivary nucleus and crosses to the opposite side. The olivary nucleus receives afferents from the sources like brainstem nuclei of the same side, spinal cord through the spino-olivary nucleus, and cerebral cortex on the opposite side. It also carries the proprioceptive impulses from whole body and output signals from cerebral cortex. Tectocerebellar tract, it arises from the superior and the inferior colliculi of tectum of a midbrain and enters the cerebellum via superior cerebellar peduncle. It carries visual impulses from the superior colliculi and auditory impulses from inferior colliculi. Now, the vestibular cerebellar tract, it arises from the ipsilateral vestibular nuclei and carries information concerning the position and the movement of head. It enters through the inferior cerebellar peduncle and conveys impulses to vestibulocerebellum, that is flocculonodular lobe, via deep cerebellar nuclei. The rubrocerebellar tract, it arises from the red nucleus. It is both crossed and uncrossed fibers. It enters through the superior cerebellar peduncle and is distributed mainly to dentate nucleus. It transmits the impulses which has originated from the motor cortex and relay in the red nucleus. Then reticulocerebellar tract, it arises from the lateral reticular nucleus, enters through the ipsilateral inferior cerebellar peduncle and is distributed to the whole of cerebellar cortex. Now, the corticopontocerebellar tract, the corticopontine fibers arises from the cerebral cortex. So, the fibers arises from cerebral cortex and end in pontine nuclei, from where the pontocerebellar fibers cross to enter the opposite side through the medial cerebellar peduncle. This ventrospinocerebellar tract, they are going through the superior cerebellar peduncle and dorsal is via inferior cerebellar peduncle. So, in the diagram you can see this is the inferior cerebellar peduncle here, this is the inferior cerebellar peduncle, this is the medial cerebellar peduncle and here is the superior cerebellar peduncle. So, most of the afferents are going through the inferior cerebellar peduncle, you can see dorsal spinocerebellar and other tracts. Then the medial cerebellar peduncle. So, this from medial cerebellar peduncle mostly important is the pontocerebellar tract and from superior cerebellar peduncle so this is superior cerebellar peduncle. So, the mostly the efferents are going. So, the afferents for superior cerebellar peduncle is a ventral spinocerebellum tract. So, it is going through the superior cerebellar peduncle and the efferents are going to different part of cerebral cortex. So, this is the flocculonodular lobe and here is the posterior lobe. So, you can see here this inferior cerebellar peduncle, middle and the superior cerebellar peduncle. Now, the efferent connections. So, we have seen now the afferents and what are the efferent connections from the cerebellum. So, the efferent connections are arising from the deep cerebellar nuclei of the cerebellum. So, there are 4 pairs of nuclei are present. So, these nuclei are a grey matter which is situated within the white matter. So, the nuclei are dentate nucleus, emboliform nucleus, fastigial nucleus and globus nucleus. Emboliform and globus nuclei have a similar connections and together they called as nucleus interpositus. So, in the diagram you can see here the dentate nucleus. So, you can see the shape of dentate nucleus. Then there is a fastigial nucleus which is a medial one. This is the dentate nucleus. Then there is a fastigial nucleus. This is the medial one. Here there is a globusus nucleus and a emboliformis nucleus. So this is the elongated nucleus is called as emboliformis nucleus. So these are the four deep cerebellar nuclei from where the efferents will come to the different parts of cerebral cortex, and it will help in the different functions of the cerebellum. So again in the diagram you can see here it's a dentate nucleus. This is the dentate nucleus, and there is in the center there is a globusus. This is the emboliformis. This is a globusus, and these are the fastigious nucleus. So the dentate nucleus is the largest cerebellar nuclei. You can see it is a shaped like purse made up of a crenated lamina of grey matter, and it has an open anteromedian hilum to receive the fibers from the superior and the mainly the superior cerebellar peduncle. Emboliformis nucleus. So this is the emboliformis nucleus. A nucleus is an oval mass of grey matter and located just anteromedian to the hilum of dentate nucleus. Then globusus nucleus lies medial to the nucleus emboliformis, and therefore together they are called as a nucleus interpositus. So these two nuclei, the emboliformis and the globusus, this is called as a nucleus interpositus, and in the medial it is called as a fastigial nucleus. It is nearly a spherical and lies close to the midline, just over the roof of fourth ventricle. So this is the fourth ventricle. So over the roof of fourth ventricle, the fastigial nucleus is present. So here these are the efferents that are going via superior cerebellar peduncle to the different parts. So here you can see the efferents via superior cerebellar peduncles. So the fibers are going to the red nucleus, to the thalamus, to the cortex, to the reticular formation, also going to the superior cerebral peduncle. So the tract which are going through the superior cerebral peduncle is cerebellothalamic cortical tract. So it is going via thalamus from the cerebellum to the thalamus to the cortical areas. So here you can see the dentate nucleus, which is the largest one. So from dentate nucleus, whatever the Purkinje fibers are saying the inhibitory input to the deep cerebellar nuclei or to the dentate nucleus, efferents will come through the superior cerebellar peduncle and is going to the different parts, that is red nucleus, thalamus and cerebral cortex.